Aloha, welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii. With us here today is Gary Rodrigues. Uh, he was at one time the most powerful man in Hawaii, also called the 26th Senator. Gary, can you tell us how you got there and some of the things you did?
Well, I started at a very young age, working for a union, and without me knowing how it happened, when I was hired by the union, an arrangement was made with the then Governor Burns. He wanted, as part of my education, that I spend 1 week per month in Oahu learning every department of the state of Hawaii. And so the union paid my salary, but I was educated in every state department with the department heads and their subordinates. And that was the beginning of my education in state government. And from then on, the governor, a few years later, wanted me to learn the state legislature. So, with the help of the Kauai Senator William Fernandez and the senator from Oahu, Nadao Yoshinaga, it was arranged that I would take leave from my job and work for Senator Fernandez at the legislature. And that was my education process for the state legislature. That's how it all began.
Okay, so tell us some of the things you did for the working class in the United Public Workers Union.
Well, when I was working for Senator Fernandez, I was still an employee of the union, but on leave. And the Hawaii Constitutional Convention approved collective bargaining for public employees. And the people approved the constitutional amendment and ordered the legislature to create the law to implement the Constitutional Convention decision. During the process of working with Senator Fernandez, I was instructed to work with the chair of the Senate's Committee on Public Employment, which was Senator Sakai Takahashi. He was in charge of creating the law from the Senate's version. So I met with him on occasion to give him my opinion of how collective bargaining should be implemented. Now, I was only one of many people that provided expert information to the Senate and the House to get the law passed. The difference was I was not lobbying, I was working with the Senate and providing what information I had on how government should implement collective bargaining. And after that, the legislature approved collective bargaining law and negotiations began. And I was assigned from the union's point to negotiate the statewide contract for the blue collar workers throughout the state of Hawaii and all the counties. That's the beginning of that process. In the meantime, the legislature had things going on that the Senate would, through Senator Fernandez, would call on me to investigate and provide research for them. And I became involved quite extensively because in the days when during Governor Burns' term, while I worked for Senator Fernandez, the legislature operated different from what it does now because the laws were different. So my job was to provide information for the Senate. Although they all had staff members, I was given specific assignments to report to Senator Fernandez and then in turn to Senator Yoshinaga. And Senator Yoshinaga also had um, what I consider one of the brilliant guys, Harold Masumoto, working with him to ensure that legislation for the people of Hawaii, not only working people, but all of Hawaii, was provided. And I then had assignments. As an example, I would be sent to the State House of Representatives and sit in on certain meetings as the representative of the Senate, and I would report back. And I was also provided assignments on what bills to follow and be ready at an instant to submit advice to the Senate on whether the bill met all of their requirements. So I was given that opportunity to learn and to work with the senators. In those days, there were two factions in the state Senate, the Burns faction and the Gill faction. Gill was a lieutenant governor for a period of time, and there was a wide difference of opinion between Gill and Burns. And Burns kept, I guess he kept an eye on him because people would report back to me as to what the governor thought and what I should do and so forth.
So you were more than a union rep then?
Yes, I had, over my career, it started with Governor Burns, and after I learned that, then eventually I became the head of the union. But then I worked with the Senate for years, and by then I had negotiated many contracts, and some of the employer negotiators started referring to me as the 26th senator. I didn't create that name. I don't know where it came from. But one guy in specific, James Takushi, who had worked with Governor Burns and Governor Ariyoshi, and was also the spokesman for Ariyoshi's negotiators, coined that phrase, and he should tell me about that. And I guess that's how it happened.
But I heard the name James Yasuda as a negotiator too. Have you dealt with him?
Yes, James Yasuda was a former Kauai boy, and he was the chief negotiator after James Takushi. And I negotiated for many years with him. And I say with him because I did not treat negotiations as against the employer. I always believe that it takes two people meaning the two groups that are involved, to enter negotiations and to arrive at an agreement. And I never believed that if the union received a satisfactory contract, that they should stand up and say, we are the winners. I always believe that at the end of negotiations, since it takes two parties, that both people would come out of the room at the same height and respect for each other. And part of that I learned from working with the Senate, because although there was the Burns and Gill faction, they never outright or openly put down the Gill faction, although they had internal disagreements. And they respected each other, and they got a lot done in those days. And even after Burns, after Ariyoshi came in, he was part of the Senate when Burns was governor. So everybody from those days had that idea that we should all respect the other side and try to get things done.
So what year was this in?
In 1965, I was hired, and that's when my training began as authorized by Governor Burns. Then in 1969, I worked for Senator Fernandez, and I did work, even though I wasn't as an employee of his thereafter, I still did work for him. And it continued on until Governor Ariyoshi became the governor. Then after I became the state director of the union, I then worked with the president of the Senate, which was Richard Wong, Norman Mizuguchi, and others.
Yes, you mentioned Senator Fernandez. I understand he did a lot of good things for Kauai.
Well, Senator Fernandez was a blue collar guy. So he wanted things done yesterday. As an example, he would give me a 100-page report at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and tell me, I want a report by tomorrow morning on what this says and what it means. And he meant it. So he had ideas because he was also tutored by Governor Burns that was far reaching. He would talk about what should happen to the roads, the systems, and his chairmanship was, just imagine this, chairman of transportation, tourism, and economic development, which encompasses practically all the economic situation for the state. And he did it statewide. And he paid a lot of attention to it, and he insisted on people complying. So I would have to carry out his instructions to departments, through various organizations and so forth.
Yeah, I heard he even wanted bypass road, bypass Kapa'a.
He had the bypass on the plans when I first started working with him. He had the bypass that bypassed Lihui, bypassed Kapa'a, was all planned. And he had influence with the plantations, so he could work with them. And they respected him, they worked with him, but it never came to pass because he had a major disagreement and he was voted out of office. His vision was that the community college should be placed on state land, which was directly across the former Kauai Resort Hotel, which is in Wailua. And other people wanted it on Grove Farm land. And that issue cost him the election. He knew that it would cost him an election, but he believed in what he was doing because he had a vision of what would happen, how it would help the students, people, the businesses. Then it would push forward the highways to get to the college, but people just disagreed.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Why don't we take a short break now?
Okay.
Gary, can you tell us some of your accomplishments?
Well, besides the union contract for UPW, that is still standing till today from the words that was created in 1971, on a government and people side, I was happy to be involved in representing the state senate after I became state director in revising Hawaii's workers' comp law. There was a major push to take away many benefits of workers' comp by the business community because they had a major concern of the high premiums. But what happened is I needed to understand what was causing the high costs because business was claiming that was the misuse or abuse of the system, but my experience showed it was not true. So the union executive board authorized me to file a lawsuit against the insurance commissioner of the state of Hawaii to challenge the rates of the insurance set for workers' comp. What we found out during the hearing was astonishing. We subpoenaed a national company that set the rates that were claiming that the workers are abusing insurance. And we put the head person on the stand and zeroed in on him and found out that the rates in Hawaii were being set by conditions totally out of the state of Hawaii. As an example, the insurance companies would set the rates based on airplane crashes in some part of the country, other conditions, investments. They would withdraw a lot of their funds from investments just before the end of the year so they could show that things were bad. So during the hearing, when the evidence started to come out, the insurance side asked that we resolve the issue. And the resolution was that the rates would be reduced and the information they had been providing to the state legislature was totally erroneous. And so insurance rates was reduced tremendously. Then the Senate wanted to update the law. So Senate President, along with consultation with his leadership, asked me to represent the Senate and negotiate with the House of Representatives, who selected Governor Ariyoshi as their representative, who in turn appointed Lieutenant Governor John Waihee, and Lieutenant Governor Waihee and I negotiated the law which is currently in existence. Now, I wasn't a lawyer. I didn't have legal background. So on many workers' comp legal issues, I consulted with a labor attorney who was an expert on workers' comp. And he provided me with information, which then I negotiated with Lieutenant Governor Waihee. And when the agreement was resolved, the legislature approved it. Then we moved on to another accomplishment in unemployment compensation, on how it was funded and why the employers would pay a lot when things were bad, when it should be the reverse. So we worked with the House of Representatives, with Representative Takamini, Ross Baker, and others, along with the Senate, to revise the unemployment compensation law, which then caused President Bill Clinton to appoint me to the national committee that under law is required to review the national unemployment law every so many years. So I was one of about 10 people who would go nationally and meet with people across the country to make recommendations on how to revise the federal law. And everybody was astonished at Hawaii's law and how come it was so good. And I tried to get the rest of the country to adopt it, but many people resisted that. But I thought that was, for me, was enjoyable because it was for people, for business and for workers.
Yeah, thanks. A lot of us think you know that you did a lot of good things for the UPW, but seems like it went way beyond that, and we all thank you. The young, especially the young people, don't realize that, and you talk about it as if it was yesterday.
Yeah, for me, it was like yesterday, but I really enjoyed it. Um, Over the years, I got drafted by different governors to do a lot of things that I didn't ask for. I didn't, for instance, I didn't ask to be on the Judicial Selection Commission, but I was put there by the Senate Press. And before I could do that, I had to challenge the state attorney general, who I thought was misinterpreting the Constitutional Convention decision on the makeup of the Judicial Selection Commission. And with my attorney, we took her to court and we won the interpretation because we did research in how the Constitutional Convention made points that people voted on. And what was astonishing is that when you vote on a constitutional amendment, it's on the ballot. And my interpretation was, if you don't vote, you vote for a person, but you vote blank on the constitutional amendment, the Constitutional Convention law said that's a no vote. Nobody agreed with me. The state didn't agree with me. But as it turned out, the state Supreme Court, after we presented research, and my legal counsel provided extensive research and found that I was right. And so since then, people have to realize when there's an amendment on the ballot, you vote yes, it's a yes. You vote no, it's a no. If you don't vote at all, it's a no. So that's another accomplishment.
Yeah, that's very important to know because every so often we come up with these constitutional amendments.
Yes, people need to pay attention to that.
Um, how are things different now from when you were involved? And you think anybody else could do the same thing?
Well, I'm sure anybody could do it if you have access and you're interested. As I said, I don't know how Governor Burns decided that I would be involved. or the senators decided I would be involved. I never asked for it, but I was willing to take on a challenge. Things are different today because elections are different. The only person that I know well at the legislature now is Senator Kim. And I think she's one of the best legislators in the Senate because she's honest, she's not afraid. And she reminds me of one of the senators from the old days that did the work for the people, irregardless of the consequences that would befall her. And I think legislators today limit their involvement. They send out mailers. In the old days, there were no mailers. And now you have social media. But I think they need to do more. As an example, if I have time, you hear the county council on Kauai constantly complain that the legislature doesn't give them enough of the state funds that are collected on Kauai. But yet, who is in the legislature? Are they from Mars? No, they're from the counties. So how come the council and the mayors from each island cannot convince the representatives from their island to give us the adequate funding? As an example, it may have changed recently, but every time a police officer gives a ticket, the money goes to the state. We don't get reimbursed for police officers' costs. So I don't know why the council keeps complaining and do nothing about it. It's the same with collective bargaining. They grumble about the solution, but they never insist on being involved with the administration from the very beginning. Because as I said in the very beginning, both sides have an equal say.
Do you think that different laws in existence now makes things different in addition to what you just mentioned?
No, I don't. Actually, with social media now, the government can send out its position really easy. The county council can make its position clear. And it's not difficult like the old days. The old days, you had to personally get out and talk to Dennis and tell him, Dennis, this is what we need to do. Today, you get on social media and it's instant education.
Okay, with time's running out. Gary, any last words?
Well, I just hope that people will continue to get involved. Because if you look at how many votes it takes to get elected mayor or the county council or a state legislator, it's a disgrace. People are not voting because for whatever reason, they're ignoring what is their right.
Thanks. What I always say, and I'll repeat it, vote, but make sure you know the issues before you vote. Thanks again, Gary Rodrigues. Thanks for being on ThinkTech Hawaii. We really appreciate all you've done, and we hope there's more people doing the same thing. Thank you. Aloha.